of the most popular episodes of the Active Travel Adventures podcast were interviews I did with husband and wife adventurers Harry and Linda. They went to both Machu Picchu and Mont Blanc together, and I interviewed them separately about their adventures in the early days of this podcast. I find it amusing that each month they seem to trade places as to which is the most popular episode for the month that is not a current release. The podcast has grown tremendously since they were first broadcast, and I thought it might be fun to reintroduce them to those that might have missed them the first time around. Nothing wrong with a little friendly spousal rivalry, right? Both of these adventure destinations are high on my personal bucket list. I might even do the Mont Blanc next summer, and hopefully Machu Picchu the following year. So please enjoy a return visit to Machu Picchu with Harry. Listen out for why Harry feels that trekking up to Machu Picchu, timing it to see the sunrise overlooking this architectural wonder, makes it even more special than this remarkable place already is. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks, and my mission is to bring you epic but doable adventures from around the world. If you're like me, you don't want to live an ordinary life. You want to live a kick-ass life. And one way to do so is to add adventure travel to your life. I find adventure travel brings out the best in me. It challenges me, it encourages me, it enlightens me, and it inspires me to lead a bigger life. On this program, you'll learn about amazing adventures from around the world, plus get the tools and information you need so you can do these adventures with confidence. You'll come home feeling empowered and with amazing memories and stories that you can relive forever. And don't worry, the bar is such that my relatively fit 58-year-old body, particularly with some training, can do these adventures, and you can too. So let's get started with today's adventure. Can you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, Harry Dickens. My wife is Linda. I have 3 kids. Linda and I both retired, living in California, where we've been for about 2 years. We used to own a business in the arts and crafts industry, which we sold, and then retired. And so fortunately, we have time and opportunity to go to places like Machu Picchu. We'd love to do something like that every year, although that place was special.
How did you get into adventure travel to begin with?
You know, it's funny. Linda and I usually used to go somewhere once a year. The kids would be at camp, and we'd go somewhere during the summer. And what we found out probably about 30 years ago, we went on a trip to Cancun. And we're sitting on the beach for about 2 hours, and we realized, something, we hate sitting on the beach. And so we pretty much made a decision that from then on, vacations would be something that would be somewhat adventurous, somewhat physical, and so on and so forth. So a couple years later, we took a trip to Wyoming and spent most days either horseback riding or hiking. It was great. So what we tried to do, although you couldn't do it every year, was we tried to do our trips that had some type of, like I said, activity, adventure to them, rather than just going someplace. Linda's very active physically. She runs marathons. I was always very active physically, and that's just something we enjoy doing.
Hiking Machu Picchu seems like it's another leap forward in your adventure travel. Am I correct in that, or can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think so. The Machu Picchu was new for a couple of reasons. One, it was really the first time we had gone with an organized group. Normally, Linda and I would sit and we'd like, let's go to Wyoming, let's do this, and we'll go to this place. And it was the two of us, and you'd meet people there. But it wasn't an organized trip with a group that was planned with a guide and so on and so forth. Machu Picchu was the first time we did that. Linda, who is very social and very outgoing, loved it. I did also, but she loved it from the standpoint of she was with a group of people that she could be with for, a week or a 2-week period and get to know them and get friendly with them and do activities with them. Not that she doesn't love me, but she liked doing it with other people also. So that was our first try at that, yeah.
In hindsight, how does the group travel work for you? Or were you pleased with how that worked? Or what are your thoughts on using guided tours?
It was great for a couple reasons. Linda was definitely absolutely more in favor of it than I was. Not that I had any problems with it. It was wonderful. One of the nice things about it is not only is the whole trip planned, but it's planned in such a way that it'd be hard to do it on your own. Something like Machu Picchu, you have to be with a group anyway to actually go on the Inca Trail. If you're just going to Machu Picchu, you can take the train down there. But to hike the Inca Trail, you have to be with a registered group, a registered guide, and so on. But something like when we went to the Mont Blanc one, if we had just gone to Europe, it would have been difficult as far as the actual hiking, because every day they had planned where we were hiking from and to. They knew the trails. The guide would take you where you were supposed to go. It's hard to imagine doing a lot of the things we did on our own. So the neat thing about it was that you had a guide that knew not only where you were supposed to go, but had a good background on the area because either he was from that area, lived in that area. So they could give you an understanding of where you were, what it was, much better than you could on your own. So you achieved a couple things. One, you were in areas that were places you wanted to go, the beautiful areas. But the background of them, whether it was a history, whether it was where you were, what you were doing, what the area was, were things that I don't think we could have gotten on our own.
I totally agree. And also, it's a major time saver.
Oh, it's a major time saver because to actually sit and plan and say, okay, we're going to do this on Tuesday, we're going to do this on Wednesday, we're going to do this on Thursday, plan the hotels and plan where you're going to stay and plan where you're going to eat. It's hard. We're not travel agents, and I guess you could get it done through that, but again, it'd be more difficult. This way, you basically just say you're going to go, you meet where you're going to start, and the trip is on. And it was great. There was never a day where we said, oh, we'd rather be doing this, we'd rather be doing that. Pretty much the group we went with kept you very busy because, again, it was active adventures. You were active. It's not just like you were spending a couple days and just kind of hanging around doing what you wanted to. They basically kept you busy most of the time. On both trips, they did leave a little bit of free time so that you can go on your own and do what you wanted to. We took definite advantage of that in the Mont Blanc trip, where we took a trip back to Chamonix and went paragliding and so on, which was wonderful. But even that, a lot of the information from that came from our guides, where to sign up, where to go, and so on and so forth. They were always a great point of reference. If we wanted to do something or go somewhere, you just ask them.
Perfect. Let's talk a little bit about your Machu Picchu. You did the actual Machu Picchu trail. There's another side trail. Or tell us about the trail and the hike itself up to it and what it felt like when you finally got up there.
The Inca, when we got interested in Machu Picchu, my daughter and son-in-law, they're both very, very active also. They'd gone to Machu Picchu several years ago. And our daughter said to us, you got to go to Machu Picchu one of these years. It was great. So anyway, so we signed up with Active Adventures for the Machu Picchu trip. And my daughter had done the Inca Trail, and she said, you got to do the Inca Trail. And so what we found was you had to register with the group early enough because the Inca Trail, the number of people they let on every day is somewhat limited because they don't want to overdo the trail. And so if you didn't sign up for the trip far enough in advance, you weren't getting on the Inca Trail. So half the group we were with were on the Inca Trail, about 3 of us, and the other half were on I think it was called the Lara Trail. What's significant about the Inca Trail is the Inca Trail, from what we understand, is that was the trail from Cusco to Machu Picchu that was taken back in the Inca times when the actual Inca, the kings and so on, would go to Machu Picchu. Because Machu Picchu was like their shrine, their temple, and so on and so forth. And the Inca Trail itself was made by the Incas and so on. It's pretty much stone all the way. It's a 4-day trip. Again, Linda and I are in good shape. We trained a little bit more because we lived in Florida at the time, and there is no up and down in Florida. Florida is a very flat place. So it was hard to get at altitude. It was hard to go up. Now, we actually found hills that were near. There was a park that used to be a dump, and it was one of the few hills around. And we used to go and we actually would run up and down the hill to help train for that. What was interesting, it probably, even though we're in good physical shape, the 4 days hiking the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu probably physically was one of the hardest things we had done. It was hard from a great standpoint. It was fun. It was good to do. It was physically demanding. It really was. Between the altitude that you were at, between walking up steps and down steps and so on and so forth, it was difficult, but we enjoyed it.
Hiking to Machu Picchu is difficult. I'd give this a grade 5, and your elevation at Machu Picchu is about 8,000 feet. However, on day 2, you're actually going up to almost 14,000 feet to get up to Dead Woman's Pass, and so you're about 6,000 feet above Machu Picchu itself. So it's going to be a very challenging hike, both in the fact that you're walking on stone. This was the stone path to Machu Picchu, the elevation gain, as well as the altitude. So it's something to consider, but this is one of the iconic hikes and sites in the world. I also want to emphasize what Harry said about planning in advance. You should probably plan this trip about a year in advance. How long each day were you actually hiking?
I'm going to say probably we were hiking 7-8 hours each day. Some days we were on the trail early. I mean, early like it's dark out, 6:30 in the morning, and you had headlamps on, and you weren't getting into the next camp till later that afternoon. Other days, usually we were on the trail by 8 or 9 o'clock, and we were getting to the next site by usually about 4 or 5 o'clock. So I would say it was 6 to 8 hours at least.
So that's a full day, and you're camping, right?
And we were camping, yes. It's funny because we said to some of our friends, they said, "So where did you stay?" And we said, "Well, we were camping." They go, "No. Like, what hotels are you staying in?" And we're like, "No, we were in tents and sleeping bags." And again, Linda and I have always enjoyed doing that. But everybody's different. They're like, "No, that's not for us." But for us, it was great. Basically, the groups, we would have porters, and the porters could carry a maximum of 50 pounds. So the porters would take any additional luggage we might have, which was minimal, because we took what they told us to take. And we had day packs on that we would carry each day. They would have water. They would have change of clothes if it was cold, if it was warm, and so on and so forth. But the porters took things like the tents, the sleeping bags, the food, the grills to cook, and they basically would get to the campground before we got there. And so when we got there, pretty much the tents were set up. We didn't have to do that. They would prepare dinner. We didn't have to do that. But the camping, we were in tents, and it varied everything from we'd be at a place one night where there were pretty much just the three of us plus the porters and the guides, and other times where there were other groups there also. So we met people from Australia, from other parts in the United States, from all over that were also camping in that area. And so basically we left, I think, like on a Monday morning, let's say. So we were camping out Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. And then I think on the 4th day we got to Machu Picchu.
Are you hiking in the jungle here? Or are you exposed? Or can you describe the trail a little bit for us?
The trail at Machu Picchu, again, pretty much is the Inca Trail. In other words, it's pretty much, when you hike it, Kit, it amazes you that the Incas actually created this thing, because the trail itself is about 23, 24 miles, if I remember right. And it's all stone. It's steps going up, it's steps going down. If it's level areas, normally it was still stone paths. Very, very few areas where the paths were just dirt. It was stone. And because it's an Inca trail, it's a trail that is set like that people go on every day, it wasn't overgrown with foliage or anything like that. It was pretty much very clear, well kept, because it's used most of the year. You're up, you're down. There were times where the trail went up to 13,000, 14,000 feet because you're going over parts of the Andes, and then you come down. But even when you went down, maybe you got down to 8,000 feet or 7,000 feet, and then you were up again over 12,000 feet. So you were going up and down, but the trail was very accessible from that standpoint. It wasn't overgrown. Even though we were at times going through wooded areas, the trail was extremely well kept, and you didn't have to go through trees or around bushes, things like that. And it's funny because not really knowing a lot about the Andes Mountains, because you're going through the Andes. We know the Rocky Mountains, we know the Sierra Mountains, but the Andes, beautiful area, and very high and up and down. So the trail itself was extremely well kept. Pretty much, you didn't have a choice. You had to have, which we did anyway, walking poles with you, hiking poles with you. And the hiking poles had to be such that normal hiking poles, if you're familiar with them, usually have, they're almost like ski poles, and they have metal tips on them because they've got to get down into the dirt or the snow, whatever. you can't hike with metal tips on the Inca Trail because the metal does a little bit of damage to the stone. So basically what you do, and you get these when you buy walking sticks, is they actually have like a rubber cover that goes over the metal point on it. And for the Inca Trail, you have to keep those rubber covers on them so that you're not putting a metal tip down into the stone. Because if you've got hundreds of people doing that every day, that's not good for the stone. And the people that are in charge of the Inca Trail are smart enough to understand that this is a very, very special place, and they want it to stay special for a long, long time.
This is a good point to add a little bit of background to Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu was built by the Incas back in the mid-1400s and was used for about a century, abandoned around the time of the Spanish conquest. However, the Spaniards did not find Machu Picchu, and thus it's still preserved. Whenever they found any of the Inca rituals, because they worshiped the sun, the Spaniards considered that blasphemous, so they would destroy it. So fortunately, the Spaniards did not find Machu Picchu. Even though the locals knew about it, Westerners did not discover it until the early 1900s. So it's only been trekked by folks like us for the last 100 years. And when you get up there, you'll see the masonry of the Incas was extraordinary. In this earthquake-prone region, all these dry stacked stones, no mortar, and also they had no wheels and no iron tools to do this. They individually hand placed these stones so that even in the earthquakes, they'll jumble and shift a little bit and then fall right back into place when the tremors stop. It's extraordinary. The Incas had no written language, and so we don't know for certain, but it is believed to be a citadel or second home for the emperor at the time. One of the treasures is the Intihuatana, which is a stone structure that lines up precisely with the winter solstice. And remember, they did worship the sun, and they believed that this Intihuatana actually tethered the sun in its place. Very cool. You'll see a picture of this and plus tons of Harry and Linda's photos on the website at activetraveladventures.com. Now let's get back to the interview. Is the trail itself beautiful, or is it something you trudge up the steps and you trudge, and then finally when you get to the top, you go, oh, wow, that was worth it?
It's beautiful pretty much the whole time. When you get to the top of a certain area, then you look behind you and go, God, we did that? And it's beautiful, and you go, I should see more. But the trail itself, because you'll be going through areas that are used to be, I guess you'd call them villages. What's very interesting about the whole thing is it's not like when you start, it's one way, and then you get to Machu Picchu, it's another way. You're constantly passing stone places that were villages and so on. Because, like I said, the Andes are so steep, people actually lived in villages at different places in the Andes, and they were farming. And in order to farm in a steep place, basically what you have to do is you can't farm on the slope of the hill. So they created almost, I guess you'd call them like plateaus. So you'd have a flat area and then a stone area that went down. And then a big flat area and then a stone area that went down. So that you could use the flat areas to plant whatever you were growing. So you'd go through places and you'd see these multiple levels. Flat area going up and working its way up the hill. And you'd see things that were stone walls around what would have been villages, see things that were parts of houses in the villages. And again, it seemed that everything was stone. Now again, at this point, and I'm not sure what it was like 200, 300, 400 years ago, but if anything was made out of wood then, it doesn't exist anymore over that period of time. Whereas the stone still lasts, and the stone's been there. So you go through places that were stone areas. And again, pretty much because you're in the Andes, it's not like you're way, way, way down in the valleys or something. You're pretty much up high most of the time. It's just a matter of how high. The views are always good. The Andes are always beautiful. And you went up and down. And even when you went to places where it was just stone and there were things surrounding you, you'd look back sometimes at the path you would come up, and it amazed you how special it was from a standpoint of how difficult it must have been to make it. Where the stone came from, they're carrying stones to put down and make these paths and stairs. And the fact that you had just done that. Because some of the stones, it's not like they created caves, but they actually had to work their way through and around areas. It wasn't like they were wide open areas, a lot of cases. Some areas they were closed in because they were wooded areas. But they still had that trail coming through.
A quick comment on the terraces that Harry is talking about. These farming terraces are engineered so well. They hear that it's over 500 years. They're still standing. They have a rock base for drainage because they get plenty of rainfall there. They didn't have to worry about irrigation. I believe it's like over 70 inches of rain a year. And they're set up such that they're holding the mountain in place without landslides. So it's a tremendous engineering achievement. So obviously this is before slide rules and calculators. So it just shows what remarkable engineers they were and what amazing masons. Tell us a little bit about the top when you finally get to Machu Picchu at the top.
Well, basically what happens, and they plan the trip this way, and it's very different. You know, it's interesting because we would talk to people who said, oh, we went to Machu Picchu. Yeah, we took the train in from Cusco, and we took the bus up from the train station. And I'm like, that's great. It must have been wonderful. But they don't realize, and you don't want to make people feel bad, how special it is when you come from the Inca Trail. Because what happens is we basically, the night before we got into Machu Picchu, we are camping out. The campsite is probably about a 2-hour hike to Machu Picchu. And so basically that last day, they get you up very early. I'm talking like about 3:30, 4 in the morning. And basically, you pack up, and one of the reasons they get you up early is because the porters want to get everything packed up, the tents and the food and everything, and they want to get to the train where they are and get back to get ready for the next trip. So pretty much what happens is you then take about a 2-hour hike to an area called the Sun Gate. And the Sun Gate is up higher than Machu Picchu, looking down at Machu Picchu. And you tend to get the Sun Gate at about 6:30 in the morning, as the sun is rising. So you actually see the sun rising and Machu Picchu going from nighttime to daytime, which is special. And again, Machu Picchu probably at that point is several hundred feet below you because you come up above Machu Picchu. So you get the advantage that a lot of people that aren't on the Inca Trail don't get in the morning of looking down on Machu Picchu. Now what's easy is what's interesting is you will get people that had gotten to Machu Picchu that then hike up to the Sun Gate, which is probably about an hour hike or so, if I remember right, so that they can look down on Machu Picchu. We did it from a standpoint of we started up there and then worked our way down to Machu Picchu. That's how you first see it.
And so what was your first impression when you saw it?
Well, you know, it's interesting because it's not like we had never seen pictures of it. It's not like we didn't know what to expect. It's still pretty magnificent. It's not like you're people that just happen to be hiking this trail and you turn a corner and you go, oh my God, what is that? But it was still pretty amazing because, again, it's not something you see ever. And it was pretty special. And what's neat about it is when you first see it at 6:30 in the morning, it's not like it's covered with people. It's just Machu Picchu. And the trains and the buses haven't quite gotten there yet. And so as you work your way down, you're one of the few people there at that point. And you're amazed again at the ability of the Incas to have built this. Because again, it still exists with walls and buildings and so on and so forth. Probably the only thing that's missing are roofs of the buildings. And having been given some of the history from the guides, it's hard to imagine when you look at it that at one point this thing pretty much was buried by dirt and grass and bushes and trees and was unknown that it was there. And you know that at that point, and then they came and pretty much dug it up and the whole thing exists. So it's kind of like a history lesson right in front of you of how they found it and how they dug it up and how it existed at all when it did and how it was built. It's pretty amazing. And the neat thing is when you see it, it's all down there. So then you know, well, that's where we're going down to. So it's pretty special because it's so different from anything else you've ever seen.
Did they allow you to go into all the areas or are some blocked off, or how does that work?
No, pretty much once you're down there, you can go into all areas. The one of the things that we didn't do, which I would have liked to have done, there is a high, across from Machu Picchu, there's a high mountain there that actually you can hike up. It's on the other side from the Sun Gate that we came down. And a very difficult hike, but I think you have to, I don't know if you have to sign up for a certain time because, again, they limit the number of people and go up this thing. But again, it was a type of thing where it was not that we looked at it and said, God, we got to do that. Because, again, we'd been hiking for 4 days already. So pretty much we were happy just being Machu Picchu. And, we spent pretty much I can't remember exactly how many hours, but a good part of the day. And you basically just walk around Machu Picchu. You walk up parts of it and down parts of it and in buildings and so on and so forth. And there's a lot there to do as far as seeing the parts of Machu Picchu, things that used to be temples, things that used to be homes. I mean, if it was a building, it still exists because they were made of stone as a building. Like I said, the only thing that really doesn't exist are the roofs, because the roofs were not stone. The roofs were made of probably types of wood because the stone wouldn't have worked as a roof. So those basically have not lasted all the years. But there are areas where they're like long flat areas where they had used them to farm. There are buildings working their way up the hill. Some of them were homes, some of them were temples. And again, when you walk around with the guide, you pretty much get an understanding of what they were and so on and so forth. So it's a pretty neat place. Now, there are some areas where there are llamas walking around, and one of the reasons is that helps them to keep the grass from growing. So it's not like they have to have lawnmowers cutting the grass, because there is grass places where they're flat, and they used to be parts of, they may have been parts of farms, they may have been parts of grass areas, almost like a front lawn for some of these buildings. If they got grass on them, the grass grows. And they want to keep it so that it's not, overgrown or things like that. But it was pretty neat. It was pretty interesting.
When you're finished, are you hiking down or do you take the train down?
You then go to a bus stop, which is pretty, Machu Picchu is interesting because you almost forget when you get there. And that's one of the neat places of coming from the Sun Gate, because somebody is coming up from the town on a bus. You get to it's almost like going to I won't say Disney World, but it's almost like going to a specific site where you get there, there's a gate, you walk in, you pay to get there, whatever it is, welcome to Machu Picchu. They have bathrooms, they have places where you can buy lunch. It almost takes away a little bit from the significance and grandeur of Machu Picchu. When you come and the first time you see it is from the Sun Gate, you don't see any of that. You basically see Machu Picchu and you hike right down to it. So the people that are taking the buses up from the town, I can't remember the name of the town, but that's where the train comes from Cusco. And then the bus comes up a hill because, again, it's very, very hilly. The Andes is very hilly. The train gets you to the entrance of Machu Picchu. So you get people coming off the buses and going in through the, again, it may not say welcome to Machu Picchu, but it's almost like that. And then pretty much they're on their own and they can walk around Machu Picchu. And it's a big area so that they, it can take as much time as they want or as little time as they want. That's pretty much how they get to Machu Picchu. In our case, what we did is when we were done, we did the opposite. So you walk back down to where the buses are. You get on the bus and the bus goes downhill. It's a road that goes down to the town below Machu Picchu. And that's where the train is. And then you go from that town. I think we had lunch down there and walked around town for a little bit. And then we took the train back to outside of Cusco. So, it depends how you get there. But the neat thing about coming from a hike is, one, you've been spending a couple days to get there. So it makes it more special. And two, seeing it, again, it's different. And I think you can imagine it. If you just get on a bus and you take a bus and you get to the entrance and you walk in and it's still Machu Picchu, it's still pretty neat, but it's not the same as coming down from the mountains to see it.
I love how you get to get the ride back down from Machu Picchu, because even though the hike is difficult to get up to the top, it would be brutal going down those stone steps on the knees. Now, your adventure included more than just Machu Picchu. Looking at the itinerary, you did some kayaking Lake Titicaca. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, what we did is basically, so after Machu Picchu, we were back in Cusco, and we did a couple things. We flew from Machu Picchu over to the Amazon, and we spent a couple days in the Amazon, and then we were over on Lake Titicaca. And again, the interesting thing is we didn't do a whole lot of studying. It's not like, well, let's read up on Lake Titicaca, and so on and so forth. So you get there and you're like, okay, I've heard of Lake Titicaca, but you really don't know necessarily the significance of it. What's special about it is it's the highest commercially navigatable body of water in the world. Basically what that means is it's a huge lake, and it's navigatable, basically meaning there's boats everywhere on it. It's used for a whole bunch of things. and yet it's still very high. I can't tell you exactly how high up it is, but it's one of the things we didn't realize about the Andes is how elevated they are. I mean, Cusco itself, which is a big city, is, I believe, at about 9,000 feet. So even the city itself, you're already up a ways. And Lake Titicaca, and again, I can't tell you how high it is, but most lakes are close to sea level, because that's just how it is. But Lake Titicaca is not like that. It's way up there.
I looked up the elevation. Lake Titicaca is about 12,500 feet high, so it's super high. And it's roughly 100 miles by 50 miles size-wise, which is around 200 kilometers by about 80 kilometers. It is near the border of Peru and Bolivia. Cusco, which is the former capital of the Inca Empire, is at over 11,000 feet.
So Lake Titicaca was pretty neat. We're on Lake Titicaca, and one of the islands on the lake we went to was an island called Amatani, I believe it was. On Amatani Island, we actually visited a local family. They have it set up where you visit a local family and you actually spend the night with them. And so we stayed at their house, and we had dinner with them, and we had breakfast with them. And again, we didn't speak their language, but they spoke enough English, and there was a husband and his wife and the kids and grandkids, and everybody was in the house, and we had dinner with all of them. Probably the most amazing thing about the lake was, which we didn't know, again, we went kayaking once we got there. And we're paddling around the kayaks, and we come up to this island, and the island was made totally of reeds that had been pulled up from other parts of Lake Titicaca. And they actually made islands out of reeds. It's kind of hard to imagine that. And these are islands that people live on, and that's their home. In other words, it's not an island like you would picture an island that exists. It was made of, if you took a whole bunch of reeds and so on and so forth, and you just bunched them together, and you tied them all together, and then you added some more, and you added some more, and you made an island. And then on the island, you made houses out of the reeds, and you made boats out of the reeds. That's what these were. And there are dozens of them. They're all over Lake Titicaca. So we actually took the canoes to took the kayaks to one of the islands, and there's a place where you can actually stop the kayaks and get out of the kayaks and be on the island and meet the people that live on the island. It sounds crazy. And I'm not sure if you looked at some of the pictures I sent you or not. Yeah, and there's one picture, I think I sent it to you, where there's like three women in front of a straw house, a reed house, wearing the clothes that they wear. And one of them that has like the pink, that's standing up, has the pink shirt and the blue dress on, that's near the door, that's Linda. So, yeah, anyway, and then there's another one, I think, of the island itself. We can kind of see some of the people and some of the houses in one of the boats. So that was kind of amazing. I mean, different way of life.
Of course, I put these photos on the website so you can see them for yourself. It truly is amazing to look at that island. Imagine that it's just a bunch of grasses tied together, and they made an island out of it. How did the Reed Island people support themselves?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I would say part of it is fishing. Part of it may be that they basically go from the island into the towns around Lake Titicaca, believe it or not. And actually, I guess you would say they commute and maybe work on because again, Lake Titicaca is a big lake, and there are towns right around Lake Titicaca. So you could have somebody that actually works in the town that lives on these islands, and they take the boat in the morning. I don't know if that's the case. And I'm not sure exactly what they do with the kids as far as education. It's a different world. It's a strange place.
So were you in a regular kayak, or were you in one of these saipan boats as you were going around the islands?
No, yeah, our kayaks are regular kayaks. I don't think of any of the pictures I sent you have the kayaks. No, the kayak I sent you are just the normal kayaks that you would get anywhere that are kind of like plastic. And yeah, we were kayaking all over the lake, and it's a big lake. So I'm not sure exactly where the kayaks were here, where you would put them, but you could put them and get out, walk around on the island. And again, the picture of us coming into the island was probably taken when we were in the kayak. So I guess there were places where you could paddle a kayaks to get to the island, where they had set it up. So, because it's very interesting. The whole world is a commercial place. I mean, even the islands. So there are certain islands that are set up so people can come to them. So guess what? And that one picture where you see Linda dressed, they are selling things that they made because they know that they're going to have people come visit. And they know that they're going to be tourists. And so they know that they can sell things. And the things they make are beautiful. You know, they're blankets and things like that.
They're weavers, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yes. And they do a lot of that. That's one of the ways they make a living on the island is they sell things to tourists.
When Linda had her picture taken, how did she get these clothes on? Did you buy these clothes or did they?
Oh, the one Linda has? I think they were some of the things that they were actually selling. So they were sitting there. So I don't know if Linda said, hey, can I put those on? Or they said, would you like to put these on? You know, Linda finds a way of communicating with people very easily. So somewhere along the line, she basically said, yeah, I'll put them on. But she put them on and yeah.
The photo is adorable. Well, and she's so tiny and she doesn't look so tiny in this photo.
No, the Inca people, and this is one of the things that amazed us about everything, and they may be, and I'm not sure on Titicaca whether they are ancestors of Incas, Mayans, or what they are, but for the most part, regardless, they were small. And so when we were going up and down the Inca Trail, and the stairs are very demanding because the stairs going up and the stairs coming down, and they're big steps. And so we're like walking up the Inca Trail going, God, you would think that the Incas would have made the steps smaller because they're such small people. You know, what were they thinking? Because it's harder even for us to go up stairs that are, I mean, picture your normal stair when you go up a stairway. Okay? Now, make that stair twice as big. And now picture going up and down a lot of stairs. It's harder. And that's how a lot of the stairs were on the Inca Trail, is they're big, high stairs. And the people in general are very small. And on Lake Titicaca, same thing. People are very small. Because you're right, Linda is standing next to one of the other women. Linda is maybe 5'2".
Can you tell us a little about the stay with the local family? Some of your memories from that?
Yes, so the town we were in a little town on this island, because there are these islands, 3 or 4 of them are on Lake Titicaca that are really good-sized islands and have good-sized populations, and they have schools, and they have everything on them from museums to general stores to homes, and the homes are nothing like the ones on these Reed Islands. I mean, they're normal homes and so on. So basically we get to the island, and pretty much they bring you to a certain place, and each group stayed with a different family. So Linda and I with one family, another group we were with another family, and so on. And pretty much they introduce you to them. And like I said, I don't remember, Kit, exactly the languages spoken, because they're actually different languages. I mean, you think, okay, they speak Spanish. No. There are different languages, and even within Peru, people that live on certain islands may speak one type of a language, and people that speak in another place, another town, speak another language. And it's almost like a combination of what the native language was to Spanish. Because again, before the Spanish came, they were Incas or they were Mayans or whatever, and they had languages. And then the Spanish came, and which wasn't the best thing in anywhere in South or Central America, but they did. And so a lot of the languages now are sometimes Spanish or sometimes combinations. In any case, nothing that we spoke. So they do this enough where they are good enough in English where they can kind of communicate and let you know, for example, that dinner's going to be at 7 o'clock and things like that. And if you have a problem, just ask. Normal basic things like that. So you can talk to them enough to say, where do the kids go to school? What do the kids do? Do they have a lot of friends here? What type of food do you eat? Things like that, just general things. And so you don't have like a really deep conversation, but you get to know a little bit about them. They're very, very nice because they basically do this a lot. The homes have extra rooms so people can stay there. So I think what happens is at some point the touring groups get together with families and say, hey, listen, how would you like to host a group of people or a couple people that we have on a trip, and here's what you have to do. And I'm sure that they get paid for that, But I think for them, it's kind of a neat thing because they get other people from other places in the world. And again, like I said, on our trip, we had people, most of the people from the United States, but some from Colorado. We were from Florida. One of the guys on the trip was from Australia. I mean, so they get people from all over the world, I'm sure, coming, staying with them. And so basically then we went back to our room and set up the room and so on and went back down to their house for dinner and had dinner with them and the kids. And again, it was the whole family. It wasn't just like a man and his wife. It was their kids and their kids' kids. So the grandkids were there and their kids were there. You talk to them and you meet them. Then at a certain time, you go back to your room. And again, it's not like there are TVs around and movies going on pretty much. And they said, okay, breakfast is at whenever it was, let's say 7. So you back down, you have breakfast, you thank them very much, you say goodbye, and you meet back up with the rest of your group who are staying at other people's homes. It was nice because you're on an island in Lake Titicaca and you're not staying at a hotel. And even though we never did that, other than in Cusco and in the Amazon, the hotel in the Amazon is interesting. I'll tell you about that one later. But you're on an island in Titicaca and you're basically staying in a home on the island, which is kind of neat. You're not camping out on your own. You're not in a hotel on your own. You're on the lake in a person's home. So it was pretty neat.
Let's switch gears and tell us about the Amazon jungle you were just talking about.
So when we get to the Amazon, it's funny because not ever having been in that area, it's kind of like, okay, what is the Amazon like? So in your mind, if somebody says the Amazon, you think, okay, this hot, buggy place, right? Because that's just for whatever reason. So, and a jungle. You're going to be in a kind of a jungle, and that's how it's going to be. So we get to the Amazon, and pretty much you're in an area that there are people there. So you can go out on hikes and on boats and so on, which we did both. So we went to the Amazon basin, and then we took a motorized canoe deeper into the jungle. And the canoes, they're not canoes as we would think canoes. They're actually boats that are motorized, but they're fairly narrow. And I think one of the pictures I had sent you, it kind of happens at sunset. And in the foreground of the picture is one of the what they call canoes, but it's a boat. And it can fit probably, 12 people or so on the boat. When we were there, so the hotel we stayed at, and I really can't tell you the exact name of the place, but what's kind of neat about it is you get the feeling you're in the jungle. So you walk in the room, and one of the walls of the room is not a wall. It's just wide open to the outside. It has a railing, but it has no cover, it has no windows, it has no wall. It's just the outside. So you're in a room, but not really. And the rooms all have mosquito netting over the beds. Because the room is wide open, you need to be in the mosquito. Now, again, it's funny. It's not like the mosquitoes are everywhere and they really bother you. I think when we used to live in Connecticut, the mosquitoes were just as bad in Connecticut in the summer. So it's like almost any place you are in the summer, there's mosquitoes. But because the room is kind of wide open, it's not like you have screen windows or anything. They have the mosquito netting over the bed. And the rooms are really nice rooms, but the way they're designed, it gives you that sense that you are in the jungle because the jungle is right out next to you. And so we stayed there, and a couple of things we did is one day we're on a boat and we went fishing. And of course, what are you fishing for in the Amazon? You're fishing for, Linda caught one.
Piranhas?
Piranhas, yes, exactly.
Wow.
And I had a picture of Linda with the piranha she caught and then holding the piranha so that you can see the teeth on the piranha. And again, piranha's a little fish. They're like maybe 2-3 inches long. But they got teeth. I mean, it's very rarely that you open up a fish that little and you see little sharp teeth. So you don't really want to go swimming there. So you see some of the animals that are native to the Amazon, piranhas being some of them, types of small alligators being others, and so on and so forth. And so what's neat is sometimes you're in a boat and you're going down the river, and other times you're hiking and you're going down trails. Basically, you get a good exposure to what the Amazon is like. And again, it's not a whole different world. It's not something like Machu Picchu where like you've never seen anything like that in your life. The river's a river. The only thing that's different is the piranhas. that is very different. But it was a very nice, pretty area. One of the things we went up so you can get a better view is they have a tower that you hike up. And I can't really tell you the exact place where the tower is. And the tower is there for a couple reasons, but one of them for us was that you get a good view of the river and of the jungle surrounding it and so on, because there's only so much you can hike down and see on foot. But this kind of gave you a good idea where we were and so on. But it was neat because the Amazon, being down the Amazon, was very different from Machu Picchu, was very different than Lake Titicaca, and yet they're all within a fairly small area.
You sent a picture of some native women dancing in the street. Is that in Cusco, or what's going on there?
That's in Cusco. We were in Cusco. It's interesting. We're in Cusco the first couple days, and part of the reason was to see Cusco, and part of the reason was also to get acclimated to the altitude. Like I said, Cusco is about 9,000 feet. So every day that we're in Cusco, before we started the Inca Trail, we were going out for hikes. And part of the reason was to get you acclimated to the altitude. People react differently to altitude. It's very interesting. Now, part of it is just to get your body used to the fact that, okay, we're going to be doing a lot of hiking, and the breathing is different because there's just not as much oxygen at 12,000 feet as there is at 200 feet. So Cusco's being at 8,000 feet gives you a little bit of that exposure. So each day we're in Cusco, we went hiking or mountain biking or doing something where we were doing something physical at altitude to hopefully build that up. The other thing in Cusco was to kind of give you a tour of Cusco, because Cusco is a beautiful city, big city, and Cusco was, way back then, the capital of the Inca people. Now, even though they would go to Machu Picchu, and that was like the great temple and so on and so forth, the capital was Cusco. I think the capital of Peru now might be Lima, but it was Cusco then, and it's still a big city. And the day we got there, and one of the things they said, the Inca people that live in Cusco, they love to find whatever they can to celebrate, whatever it may be. So I think that particular day may have been the longest day of the year because we were there in June. It could have been the summer solstice. And so they decided, okay, we're going to celebrate. So this was one of the celebrations where they have all these women dancing and in costume and so on. So pretty much anywhere you were in town, there was something going on. And that's what this was. So it wasn't like we just happened to stumble upon this and stopped and watched it. But that was, like it says, Cusco was the heart of the Inca Empire. That's pretty much where everything started. And so if the king wanted to go to Machu Picchu to get to the temple, he basically had to be, because he was carried on these things that they would put on their shoulders from Cusco to Machu Picchu, which again is a long way.
You also did some cycling, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what the Active Adventures likes to do is they like to give you a certain amount of variety. Most of the time you're hiking. But some of the time it was the same when we went to the Alps. They like to throw in some things a little bit different. And one of those is biking, and one of those is kayaking. So it's not like every other day you're doing something different. The majority of it you're hiking. But the thing with the biking, and again, I do a lot of cycling on my own, wherever I am. And matter of fact, I went yesterday. And what's nice about cycling is you get to see a bigger area than when you're just hiking. And so there were parts when we were biking. I'm trying to think, we were biking a couple places. We were biking, one place we went cycling in a place called the Sacred Valley. That was outside of Cusco. And again, what's neat about it is beautiful area. There are some areas that you might only see if you happen to be driving in a car or a bus or something like that. And so the neat thing about cycling is you can cover an area that's, 20 miles a lot quicker, so a bigger area than if you're walking 20 miles. Walking 20 miles may take you hours and hours, whereas biking, you can do it in 4 or 5 hours or less depending on where you're going. And again, the cycling was hilly areas. Bikes that they give you are excellent bikes, and they have it set up so that they have a guide that you're following, and so you know exactly where you're going. And that's one of the nice things, again, of going on a tour rather than going on your own. Because he said, gee, let's rent a bike today and go. I wouldn't know where you'd go. So basically set up where you started and where you finished. And what you ended up doing is the Sacred Valley is an area we might not have gone through because it was outside of Cusco, but it was a beautiful area as far as what it was, where it was in the Andes. We went past places such as llama farms and places where women were actually taking the llama wool and making things out of the wool, such as sweaters or blankets or a whole bunch of things. So these are things that they do naturally, but they don't live in Cusco. They're in these small little villages around. So you get to see a lot of those things, and then you'd hop on the bike and you go to the next one. So the biking was neat because it gave us an opportunity to see places that we didn't normally see. And Linda, who's not a biker but is a runner and is not crazy about bikes, she was fine and she enjoyed it. Although, when she first started, she goes, "You sure I'm going to be able to do this?" And I'm like, "Linda, it's a bike. You'll be fine." So that was great. It was a nice variation from the hiking because you were still out, you were still active, you were still going places. You just had a different means of transportation. And it wasn't like you were just hopping in a van and going. It's funny, Kit. We went to, I think we were in Yellowstone. This is many years ago. That year we went to Wyoming. We're hiking around Yellowstone, and we got out early one morning, went on a hike where we knew there was a great show, and went up this mountain, and we didn't see a soul the whole time. And fortunately, we didn't see any bears either, because one of the things you don't want to do in Yellowstone is come across bears. So we're coming down from the hike, and we started to see people kind of starting the hike. And then we also saw on this road across from us this bus. The bus stopped. People get out. People look where we are. People get back on the bus, and people go. And I said to Linda, I said, I don't ever want to do that. And she goes, "Do what?" I said, "Go on a trip where you're just on a bus." Because, in my mind, it was always like, you get on the bus, you get off, you look around, you get on the bus, you go somewhere else, you get off, you look around, you get on. And now they may do other things than that, but that was one of the times where we decided, something, if we're going to go places, we want to be active, we want to go hiking, we want to go biking, we want to go boating, we want to do something where we're doing it, rather than just being on a bus. Now, that's fine because that gives a lot of people an opportunity to see things they might not see. But for us, that's not how we want to do it.
That cracks me up, Harry. I said virtually the same thing, although not quite as politely, on the very first episode of the Active Travel Adventures podcast, episode 000. The very first minute says it all.
Yeah. It's different. It's funny because when we were in Iceland, and again, we didn't go over the Iceland trip at all. The Iceland was on our way home from the Alps tour. And there are more buses. You'd get to certain places where there's some beautiful waterfalls in Iceland. And you could drive down a road and not pass anybody for hours. And then you get to near one of the waterfalls. And there's 14 buses there. And it's kind of like, okay, beautiful place to see. And it's neat that people get to see them. But, everybody has different ways of doing things, I think.
On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the most difficult, overall, how was this trip?
Physically?
Yes.
I would say from all the trips we've done, 5.
So this was harder than Mont Blanc?
That's a good question. That's a good question because I put Mont Blanc at a 5 also. The only reason I put 5 on, and again, the trip itself, the only part that was really difficult was the 4 days going to Machu Picchu. And again, at the end of that time, Lynn and I both agreed that this was probably the hardest thing we had done. Not just from a trip, but actually if it's like, okay, we have nothing to do today, let's do something. That was probably the hardest thing we had done because you just basically did it and kept going and kept going. The Mont Blanc was also difficult. The hiking wasn't quite as demanding as Machu Picchu because you weren't going up and down quite as much. And again, you were on trails as opposed to stairs. Stairs, you would think, well, stairs sounds great. But stairs are hard. And especially when they're big ones, Kit. Like I said, a normal staircase, imagine going up let's say you're going up 20 floors in a building. Okay. And the only way to do that is really go through one of the fire escapes so you can get up on the stairway and go up the stairs. Okay. You're right. Stairs are hard. Now, like I said earlier, double or triple the size of those stairs. And now do those 20 floors. That's kind of how the Inca Trail is. And I think between the stairs and the altitude being more than on Mont Blanc, because again, there were times on the Inca Trail where we'd be at 12,000 feet, we'd be at almost 14,000 feet. And so you better be drinking a lot and breathing a lot because it was demanding that way. So yeah, I would pick Inca Trail at 5.
Did anyone in your group have difficulties actually, where you were worried that they weren't going to be able to complete it or do it?
No, actually, it's funny because there were only 3 of us from our group there on the Inca Trail because there were about 4 or 5 other people, and they were on the Laura Trail. And one of the reasons they were on that is because, like I said, they hadn't signed up early enough for the trip. And Active Adventures or anybody has to register a certain number of months way ahead of when you're going to actually secure a position on the Inca Trail. And the Laura is not the same. It's not the Inca Trail. So you're still hiking, but it's not as demanding. It's not as up and down. I asked that same question to the guide. I said, let me ask you a question. It's not like you have a fitness test before somebody goes on the Inca Trail to see if they can do this. What happens if you get somebody that gets to a point like halfway and says, I'm done, I can't do it? And it's interesting because I kind of got an answer, but I don't know if that's ever happened. And he basically said, they've got to finish. They've got to finish. And it's not like they can put you in a car and take you back because there are no roads on the Inca Trail. And so he did tell me a story once. He goes, we had a woman once, a little older, a little heavy, and they basically said at the beginning, this is very hard, very difficult. And she goes, I want to do this. I will do whatever I have to do it. And what she had to do was she would get up at like 2:30 in the morning, and she did the trail, but it just took her much longer because she did it slower, stopped a lot more. And she would leave early in the morning and get to where she was going at 4 in the afternoon, and she still did it. So there are ways to do it. I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to start hiking it at 2:30 in the morning just so I could, take that much time. But when we finished, Lynn and I, said, so who of our friends do you think would want to do this? Or if they wanted to, could do it? And out of everybody we know and people we're very friendly with, I think maybe one couple, 2 couples could do it or would want to do it. So there's both sides to it, Kit, because it's the type of thing that we know people that would love to see Machu Picchu, they don't want to camp out. We know people that would love to see Machu Picchu, but they're not going to hike for 4 days. And that's okay because, that's how they are. So it's special in that way because when you're done with it, you think, something, what we did was very special, was very difficult, and not something that everybody does. Either because they can't do it or they don't want to do it. So it is difficult.
Do you have a favorite memory or a favorite story that you tell?
Other than Linda holding the piranha? Let me think. Machu Picchu trip was 2.5 years ago. And so there are times where it seems like a long time ago and other things that, it doesn't seem all that long. I think for us, the best part about the trip and the most exciting thing was, again, Machu Picchu. And I think when we got out that first morning and we were at the where the sun comes up over Machu Picchu, when we were at Sungate, that was pretty neat because the sun literally is coming up over the mountains because the hills there are the mountains there are so high and not just high like something in the Rockies, high where they're small from a pointed standpoint, big pointed thing here, big pointed thing there. So when the sun comes up, there's certain things, of course, that are in the shadow because they're so big and they're so high. And so Machu Picchu at the time, there were clouds over it, and the cloud just kind of moved over, and all of a sudden below you is this place that is just special because not something you see anywhere else. So that was probably the neatest thing about the trip. And again, because we also had been hiking for 4 days, so that kind of is like the reward of all of that. Because again, the hike was difficult. It was hard. Now, again, it wasn't hard at the end of the day. You're exhausted, tired, yes. And the group that we had, like I said, there were only 3 of us that went on it. Phil, who was the other guy with us, Phil from Colorado, Phil handled the trail fine. He was a little slower than we were, but that's fine. The other people, there was one girl when we were in Cusco at 9,000 feet that was having problems with altitude sickness. And again, that's not something you can plan on. It's not something you have or you don't have unless you've experienced it somewhere. And I have no idea why some people get altitude sickness and other people don't. But altitude sickness can cause everything from just being dizzy to feeling sick to your stomach to whatever, just because you happen to be walking around places at 9,000 feet. It's not that you were climbing a mountain. It's not that you're just at altitude. People's bodies react differently to that. Fortunately for Linda and I, we never had a problem with that. But this one girl did. But fortunately, when she got, after a couple of days, she got a little bit more used to the altitude, and they did the Laura Trail, and she was fine, which is great. I mean, you hate to see somebody have a problem with something like that because it looks painful.
When you do something like this, how does it make you feel about yourself, or how does it change you, if at all?
I think it's like anything from the actual physical aspect of it. It's rewarding because you accomplish something that not everybody can do. From just the aspect of going someplace that's special like that, like to a Machu Picchu, that's very neat. Again, we've talked to people and they said, oh yeah, we went to Machu Picchu 5 years ago. It's great. We did this and that. And again, we may say something about the trail and they said, oh no, we just took the train. So there's 2 things that's special. Just going to Machu Picchu is special because it is. But I think for us, it was special for both reasons. One, where we went was a special place. And 2, how we got there was special.
Our thanks to Harry Cohen for his amazing interview and explaining to us about this incredible adventure of a lifetime to Machu Picchu in Peru. He went with Active Adventures, one of my affiliate partners. If you do choose to go with them as well, please be sure to let them know that Kit at Active Travel Adventures sent you. There's also a link to their site on the website, activetraveladventures.com. If you're interested in hiking Machu Picchu, be sure to download the free travel planner that you can find at the activetraveladventures.com website, episode number 14. And obviously, if you get the newsletter, you know that you'll get these automatically at the end of each month. I hope that you've enjoyed visiting Machu Picchu again. No wonder it's one of the highest rated adventures on most adventurous folks' bucket list. People often plan their next vacation during the holiday season. I'd love to hear where you plan to go in the next year. Please send me an email at kit@activetraveladventures.com or reach out to me on social. Be sure to tag me so that I see it. You can find my social handles by scrolling down on your phone to the show notes below or by going to the activetraveladventures.com website. Be sure to also visit the website to see pictures and videos of more of today's interview as well as all the other previous episodes that we've done on the Active Travel Adventures podcast. Thanks for listening. I'll be back in 2 weeks, and until then, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on!